Friends in the Dhamma. Today we are talking about the story of Venerable Meghiya, Dhammapada verses 33 and 34. I received a few questions about it. First question: what happened in the story of Venerable Meghiya? Okay, Venerable Meghiya was attending the Buddha while they were staying at Chalika mountain nearby. The Meghiya saw a beautiful mango grove that seems like a perfect place for meditation. Feeling inspired, he asked the Buddha, Bhante, that mango grove looks suitable for meditation. May I go there to meditate? The Buddha replied gently but firmly, Meghiya, wait for a little while. I am alone right now. Stay until another monk arrives. The Buddha was not forbidding him for meditating. He was simply asking him to remain for a short time so the Buddha would not be left unattended. Meghiya goes anyway. Despite the Buddha's request, Meghiya felt a strong personal urge to meditate immediately. He insisted 3 times. And finally, the Buddha allowed him to go. Meghiya then went to the mango grove, sat down and began meditating. What happened during his meditation? Instead of experiencing calm or insight, Meghiya was overwhelmed by lustful thoughts, hateful thoughts, deluded thoughts. These 3 unwholesome mental states became so strong that he could not continue meditating. His mind was restless, agitated, and unmanageable. Exactly like the Dhammapada verses describe. Verses 33, the mind is fickle, slightly hard to guard. Like a crooked arrow, sharp, needing to be straightened. And also verse 34, when trying to escape Mara's domain, the mind flies like a fish thrown into dry land. Then realizing he could not make progress, Meghiya returned to the Buddha. The Buddha's response, the Buddha explained that Meghiya had made a mistake. He left the Buddha alone despite being asked to stay. He acted under the control of his thoughts rather than wisdom. A monk should not follow every impulse that arises in the mind. The Buddha then taught him about the nature of the mind, how unstable, untrained, and easily disturbed it is, and how a wise person must train it patiently, just as a fletter straightens an arrow. After hearing the Buddha's teaching, Meghiya attained the fruit of stream entry, we call Sotapanna. Many other monks who were present attained the 2nd and 3rd stage of awakening, Sakadagami and Anagami. Okay, then second question. When Meghiya began meditating, what kind of thoughts disturbed his mind? Okay, when Meghiya sat down to meditate, instead of calm and clarity, his mind was overwhelmed by 3 unwholesome mental states. These are the classic 3 evil thoughts: called Akusala Vitakka, mentioned throughout of the sutras. Below is a simple list with explanation. First, lustful thoughts, Kama Vitakka. These are thoughts connected with sensual desire, wanting, craving, imaging pleasurable experiences, or being attracted to sense object. They pull the mind outward. They create restlessness and dissatisfaction. They make concentration impossible. In Meghiya's case, his mind became filled with fan- sensual fantasies and desires, showing that his mind was not yet mature enough for solitary meditation. The second, hateful thoughts, Vyapada Vitakka. These thoughts of irritation, anger, resentment, or ill will towards people or situations. They heat the mind, they distort perception, they block loving kindness and inner peace. Meghi experienced these thoughts because his mind was untrained and easily agitated when left along with guidance. Third, deluded thoughts, vihinsavitak or avijjavitak. These are thought rooted in confusion, wrong misunderstanding, or mental dullness. They cloud judgment, they weaken mindfulness. They create indecision and inner instability. Delusion makes the mind wander aimlessly, unable to see clarity or stay focused. Why these thoughts arose? The story illustrates a deep psychological truth. When the mind is untrained, solitude does not calm it. It exposes its hidden tendencies. Meghi wanted to meditate, but he lacked the supporting conditions: strong mindfulness, moral stability, emotional maturity, wise reflection, a calm environment, a teacher's guidance. So, when he sat alone, the mind reacted like the Dhammapada verse described. Verse 33, the mind is cocked and needs training like an arrow shaft. Verse 34, the mind flutters like a fish out of water when trying to escape Mara's domain. The third question, why did Meghiya return to the Buddha? What difficulty was he experiencing? Okay, Venerable Meghiya returned to the Buddha because his meditation completely failed and he found himself overwhelmed by a powerful, unwholesome mental state. Instead of experiencing calm or insight, his mind became restless, agitated, and unmanageable. He was attacked by the three unwholesome thoughts. While meditating in the mango grove, Meghiya was flooded by lustful thoughts, kama vitakka, hateful thoughts, vyapada vitakka, deluded thoughts, vihinsa vitakka, or avijja vitakka. These thoughts were so strong that he could not maintain mindfulness or concentration. His mind behaved like the Dhammapada similars. The Buddha later explained that Meghiya's mind was fickle and hard to control, like a crooked arrow shaft needing to be straight. trembling and agitated like fish thrown out of water into dry land. This describes a mind that is not yet trained, not yet stable, and not ready for deep meditation. Why this happened? May give in to the meditate out of passion but without proper preparation. He lacked strong mindfulness, emotional maturity, supportive conditions, guidance from the Buddha, and also a stable foundation of wholesome qualities. Because of this, solitude did not calm him, it exposed his inner defilement. So, why did he return? He returned because he could not handle the storm inside his own mind. He returned because his meditation was overwhelmed by lust, hatred, and delusion. He returned seeking guidance from the Buddha after realizing his mind was untrained. This moment of humility became the training point that allowed the Buddha to teach him, leading to Meghiya's attain of stream entry. Okay, fourth question. According to the Buddha, why was Meghiya's mind not ready to practice successfully at that moment? Okay, according to the Buddha, Meghiya's mind was immature, unsteady, and lacking the necessary supporting conditions for deep meditation. Even though Meghiya had enthusiasm, he did not yet have the inner strength to stability required for solitude. Here are the key reasons the Buddha pointed out. First, his mind was still dominated by unwholesome tendencies. Maggie's mind was easily overpowered by lust, hatred, and delusion. These forces were still strong in him. So, when he sat alone, they rose up immediately. A mind full of defilements cannot settle into calm or insight. Second, his mind was flighty, fickle, and hard to control. The Buddha compared Maggie's mind to a crooked arrow shaft that needs steady, a fish out of water, crashing and trembling. These similar show that his mind lacked stability, discipline, emotional maturity, and mindfulness. Without these qualities, meditation becomes a struggle rather than a refuge. He lacked the necessary supporting conditions called upakara dhamma. The Buddha later explained that five supportive conditions are needed for monk to grow in meditation. One, a good friend, kalyana mitra. Second, moral discipline. Third, suitable conversation. Fourth, effort. And fifth, wisdom. Meghi had gone off alone without these supports. His willingness was sincere, but he did not yet have the internal foundation to meditate independently. Fourth, he acted out of impulse, not wisdom. The Buddha reminded him a monk should not be controlled by his thoughts. Meghe followed his sudden desire to meditate rather than the Buddha's guidance. This showed that his mindfulness was weak. His judgment was immature. His mind was still driven by impulses. Because of this, he could not remain steady when difficulties arose. Fifth, he was not yet trained enough for solitude. Solitude reveals the true state of the mind. For an untrained mind, solitude does not bring peace. It exposes hidden defilement. Meghe discovered this the hard way. In summary, Meghiya's mind was not ready because it was unstable and untrained. It was still dominated by lust, hatred, and delusion. He lacked the supportive conditions for meditation. He acted impulsively rather than wisely. His emotional maturity was not yet developed. This is why his meditation failed and why he returned to the Buddha seeking guidance. Next question. Explain in your own words what it means to say that the mind wanders wherever it wishes. Wanders wherever it wishes. To say that the mind wanders wherever it wishes means that an untrained mind does not stay where we want it to stay. Instead, it jumps from one thought to another, gets pulled by desires, fears, memories, and fantasies, react automatically to whatever arises, refuses to remain steady on the chosen object. In other words, the mind behaves on its own, without discipline or guidance, much like a monkey leaping from branch to branch, a fish fluffing around on dry land, a leaf blown by the wind. This is exactly what happened to Venerable Meghiya. He sat down intending to meditate, but his mind did not obey him. It followed its old habit, lust, anger, and confusion, rather than his intention to be mindful. In everyday language, it means the mind goes wherever it wants, not where you want it to go. When the mind is untrained, it is impulsive, easily distracted, and quick to chase whatever arises. Only through training, mindfulness, discipline, and wise reflection does not mind become steady, obedient, and peaceful. Okay, next question. Question number 6. Why does the Buddha say that training the mind leads to happiness? The Buddha teaches that an untrained mind is the main source of suffering, while a trained mind becomes the source of peace and happiness. This idea is beautifully illustrated in Meghiya's experience. Let's break it down in simple practice terms. First, an untrained mind is unstable and easily disrupted. The Buddha described the mind as flighty, fickle, hard to guard, easily shaken, like a crooked arrow shaft, a fish out of water. When the mind is like this, it constantly runs towards desire, anger, confusion, fear, worry, regret. Such a mind cannot rest. It cannot enjoy peace. It creates suffering even when the external world is powerful. This is exactly what happened to Meghiya. He sat in a beautiful mango grove, but his mind was full of unrest. Second, a trained mind becomes calm, steady, and obedient. Training the mind, thought mindfulness, discipline, and wise reflection makes it steady, clear, peaceful, obedient, balanced. A trained mind does not chase every impulse. It does not get lost in lust, anger, or delusion. It becomes like a straight arrow, ready and effective. A calm lake reflecting things clearly. Such a mind naturally experiences inner happiness because it is no longer pushed around by defilement. Third, happiness comes from within, not from external conditions. The Buddha teaches that both defilement and purity depend on oneself. No one purifies another. This means happiness is not created by the world outside. Happiness is created by the conditions of one's own mind. When the mind is trained, even simple situations bring joy. When the mind is untrained, even a beautiful places like Meghiya's mango grove brings suffering. For training, the cause of suffering. The Buddha says that the mind must be trained because it is the root of all actions. When the mind is trained, greed weakens, anger dissolves, delusion fades, wisdom grows, compassion arises. These qualities naturally produce happiness, both in meditation and in daily life. Fifth, the trained mind is free. Ultimately, the Buddha teaches that the highest happiness comes from freedom. Freedom from craving, freedom from hatred, freedom from confusion, freedom from mental agitation. Training the mind leads step by step towards this freedom. In summary, the Buddha says training the mind leads to happiness because an untrained mind is restless and creates suffering. A trained mind becomes calm, clear, and peaceful. Happiness arises from inner purity, not external conditions. Training removes the mental defilement that causes suffering. A trained mind experiences freedom, which is the highest happiness. This is why the Buddha compared mind training to a fletcher straighting an arrow. Only a straightened mind can fly through and reach its target, happiness and liberation. Okay, so explain the simile of the fish taken out of water. What does the fish represent? What does the water represent? The Buddha says that the mind, when trying to escape from Mara's domain, unwholesome states, trembles like a fish taken out of water and thrown on dry land. This simile is simple but very deep. Here's what each part represents. The fish, the untrained mind. A fish naturally belongs in water. When it is pulled out, it beats, panics, struggles, cannot stay still, fight desperately to return to its old environment. This is exactly how an untrained mind behaves when we try to restrain it or direct it towards wholesome qualities. The fish represent a mind full of habits, a mind attached to sense pleasure, a mind not yet disciplined, a mind that reacts automatically to impulses. Just like the fish, the untrained mind cannot stay still when removed from its usual environment of craving, anger, and destruction. The water, the realm of Mara, unwholesome habits. Water is the natural home of the fish. In the similar, water represent sensual pleasure, old habit, defilement, mental distraction, the comfort zone of craving and ignorance. This is the Mara, the domain of Mara, meaning the mental world dominated by greed, hatred, and delusion. When we try to pull this mind out of these familiar patterns, it reacts just like a fish full out of water. Putting it together, the fish, the mind, the water, unwholesome tendencies, and all habit. Crushing the mind's resistance when we try to train it. When someone begins meditation or tries to abandon unwholesome thoughts, the mind does not immediately become calm. Instead, it shakes, resists, jumps from thought to thought, tries to return to its all patterns. This is exactly what happened to Venerable Meghiya. His mind was not yet trained, so when he sat alone, it present like a fish out of water. Why this similar is powerful? It teaches us that restlessness is natural at the beginning. The mind will resist training. All habits do not disappear instantly. Patience and steady effort are essential. The Buddha uses this image to encourage practitioners not to be discouraged when the mind behaves wildly. It is simply doing what an untrained mind does. Okay, next question. Question number 8. Think about your own experience. When you try to focus or be mindful, what usually distract the mind? Uh, when we try to be mindful, whether in meditation, study, prayer, or daily tasks, the mind often behaves just like the Buddha described. It wanders wherever it was. Everyone experiences this. The distraction may differ from person to person, but they usually fall into a few familiar patterns. Here are some common ones you might recognize in your own experience. One, first, thoughts about the past. The mind loves to replay old conversation, mistakes, regret, memories, things we wish had gone differently. These thoughts pull us backward and make it hard to stay present. Second, worries about the future. The mind also jumps ahead to plans, fears, what if scenarios, expectations, imagine problems. This creates anxiety and restlessness. Third, daydreaming and imagination. Sometimes the mind simply drifts into fantasies, stories, random images, pleasant dreams, mental movies. This is the mind way of escaping the present moment. Fourth, strong emotions. Feeling can powerful reactions, anger, sadness, excitement, loneliness, frustration. When emotions arise, they often take over the whole mind. Fifth, sensual desire. Just like Meghiya, we can be distracted by craving, attractions, hunger, comfort seeking, wanting something pleasant. These pull the mind outward towards sense object. Six, external motivations. Sounds, notifications, people, movement. Anything in the environment can grab the mind's attention if mindfulness is weak. Seventh, internal restlessness. Sometimes the distraction isn't a specific thought, it is just boredom, impatient, agitations, the urge to move, the feeling of I don't want to sit still. This is the mind behaving like the fish out of water. Why this question matters? By noticing what distracts your mind, you begin to understand your own patterns. This is the first step in training the mind, seeing clearly what pulls it away. The Buddha's teaching to Meghiya reminds us distraction is not a failure. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. With practice, patience, and kindness towards yourself, the mind gradually becomes steadier and more peaceful. Okay, next question. Why do you think the mind often resists discipline or restraint? The mind resists discipline for the same reason a wild animal resists being tamed. It is used to following its habits, impulses, and desires without question. Let's break this down in a way that makes sense both in Dhamma terms and a personal experience. First, the mind is conditioned by old habit. For years, sometimes for lifetimes, the mind has been chasing pleasure, avoiding discomfort, reacting automatically, following whatever thought arises. When we suddenly try to discipline it, the mind feels pulled away from what it is familiar with, just like the fish in the Buddha's similar, it defeated when removed from its usual environment. Second, discipline threaten the mind's craving. Mindfulness and restraint require letting go of desires, staying still, observing without reacting. But the untrained mind enjoys motivation. It wants entertainment, fantasies, emotional drama, sensory pleasure. So, when we try to restrain it, the mind feels denied and rebels. Third, the mind fears stillness because stillness reveals what is inside. When the mind becomes quiet, we begin to see our fears, our attachment, our insecurities, our hidden emotions. This can feel uncomfortable, so the mind distracts itself to avoid facing these deeper layers. Fourth, the mind is naturally restless. In Buddhist psychology, the untrained mind is described as chapala, fickle, pandana, trembling, dunnivare, hard to restrain. This is simply it is nature before training. Expecting it to be calm immediately is like expecting a puppy to sit still on the first day. Fifth, discipline requires effort, and the mind prefers the easy path. Mindfulness, concentration, and resistance require energy, patience, repeated practice. But the mind prefers comfort, laziness, familiar routine. So it resists anything that feels like work. Six, the ego dislikes losing control. When we discipline the mind, we are essentially saying you don't get to run the show anymore. You don't get to run the show anymore. The ego reacts to this loss of control with resistance, distraction, and excuses. In simple terms, the mind resists discipline because it is used to being in charge. It prefers comfort over effort. It clings to old habit. It fears stillness. It avoids facing uncomfortable truth. This is why the Buddha emphasized gradual training, good spiritual friends, and supportive conditions because the mind becomes obedient only through patient, gentle, consistent practice. Okay, next question. The Buddha compared training the mind is straighten an arrow. What qualities are needed for this process? What qualities are needed for this process? When the Buddha compares mind training to a fletcher straighten an arrow, he is highlighting the care, patience, and skill required to transform something naturally cropped into something straight, strong, and effective. Just as an arrow does not become straight by itself, The mind does not become calm or disciplined without effort. Here are like key qualities indeed. First, patient. Khanti. Straightening an arrow takes time. Training the mind also requires enduring restlessness, staying steady through difficulties, not expecting instant result. Without patience, the mind becomes discouraged and gives up quickly. Second, effort and determination. Meghiya. A flesher must apply steady pressure to sharp the arrow. Similarly, we need continuous effort, willingness to try again, energy to overcome laziness and distraction. Mind training is a gradual process that depends on consistent effort. Third, mindfulness or sati. A flesher must pay close attention to every curve and imperfection. In the same way, mindfulness helps us notice wandering thoughts, recognize unwholesome states, stay present, guide the mind gently back. Mindfulness is the hand that holds the arrow. For wisdom, panya. Wisdom tells us what to cultivate, what to abandon, when to push, when to relax. Without wisdom, effort becomes blind and unbalanced. Fifth, consistency, appamada. An arrow becomes straight through repeated sharpening. The mind becomes trained through daily practice, regular reflection, steady discipline. Consistency is more important than intensity. Six, good spiritual friendship. Kalyanamita. The Buddha told Meghiya that good friends are the first condition for mental growth. They provide guidance, encouragement, correction, inspiration. Even the flesher learned his craft from someone. In summary, to train the mind like straighten an arrow, we need patience, effort, mindfulness, wisdom, consistency, good spiritual friends. These qualities slowly transform the mind from something restless and impulsive into something steady, sharp, and capable of insight. Okay, next question. Describe one situation in daily life where an untrained mind can create problems. For example, getting angry during a conversation. Imagine if someone says something you don't like, maybe a criticism, a misunderstanding, or harsh tone. If the mind is untrained, it reacts instantly. Irritation rises, the heart beat faster, harsh words come out, the situation escalates, both people feel hurt afterward. Nothing truly dangerous happened externally. The real problem came from the mind's automatic reaction. What caused the problem? An untrained mind takes things personally, jumps to conclusions, react before thinking, gets swept away by emotion, cannot pause or reflect. Just like Meghiya's mind in the mango grove, it follows old habit, anger, pride, fear without awareness. What would a trained mind do instead? A trained mind forces, breathes, listen, respond wisely, chooses kindness over impulse. The external situation is the same, but the outcome is completely different. Why this matters? This example shows that most suffering in daily life doesn't come from the world. It comes from the untrained mind reacting blindly. That's why the Buddha emphasized training the mind. It transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for peace, instead of conflict. Next question. Describe one practical method that can help train or calm the mind. One of the most effective and accessible method is mindful breathing. Paying gentle, steady attention to the natural breath. It works because the breath is always with you, always moving and always bringing you back to the present moment. How it works. Sit comfortably. Bring your attention to the sensation of breathing, the air entering and leaving the nostrils. When the mind wanders, and it will gently bring it back to the breath. Continue with kindness and patience. Why this method is powerful? First is it steadies the mind. The breath becomes an anchor. Each time you return to it, you strengthen mental discipline, just like straightening the arrow again and again. Second, it reduces restlessness. Focusing on the breath slows down the reacting through an emotional turbulence. Third, it builds mindfulness. You learn to notice when the mind wanders without judging yourself. This awareness is the foundation of all deep meditation. Fourth, it calms the nervous system. Breathing naturally reduces the body, which in turn calms the mind. In simple terms, mindful breathing trains the mind to stay where you place it. It teaches patience, steadiness, and clarity. The extract qualities the Buddha encouraged Meghiya to develop. Next question. What lesson from the story of Meghiya is most meaningful to you? Explain why. For me, the most meaningful lesson is this: even sincere excitement is not enough. The mind needs the right condition and gradual training. Meghiya genuinely wanted to meditate. His intention was good. His excitement was strong. He even chose a beautiful, peaceful place, but still his mind rebelled. This teaches a powerful truth. Good intention alone cannot tame an untrained mind. We need patience, preparation, and supportive conditions. Why this feels meaningful? It reminds me that I shouldn't be discouraged when my mind doesn't behave the way I want. It shows that struggling in meditation is not a failure. It's simply the nature of an untrained mind. It highlights the importance of guidance, friendship, and humility. It teaches that spiritual growth is gradual, not instant. Just like Meghe, we sometimes rush into things thinking we are ready, only to discover that our mind still needs strengthening. And that's okay. The Buddhas didn't scold him to shame him, he guided him with compassion. Okay, next question. Can you explain how the teaching in these verses can be applied to modern life? Apply the teaching to modern life. In modern life, our minds are constantly pulled in many directions: social media, stress at work, personal worries, and endless distractions. The Buddha's teaching remind us that an untrained mind behaves just like the restless fish or the crook arrow. It jumps from thoughts to thoughts and react impulsively, often creating unnecessary stress and conflict. By training the mind through mindfulness, patience, and steady effort, we learn to guide our thoughts instead of being controlled by them. This inner discipline helps us stay calm in difficult situations, make wiser decisions, and experience a deeper sense of peace even in a busy, fast-moving world. Training the mind is important because training the mind is important because it keeps us from being pushed around by impulses and emotions, allowing us to respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. A trained mind becomes source of calm, clarity, and genuine happiness in the middle of a busy and unpredictable world. Okay, that's all. Then we will meet another Q&A session. Thank you very much.